This lesson is part of Media, Mobiles, and Ministry, which is a curriculum set of over 40 lesson plans covering 4 different topic areas: foundations of media ministry, mobile ministry, social media ministry, and do-it-yourself mobile media creation. You can find more information at www.mobmin.org/train. Welcome to Foundations, lesson number 8, and we call it Walking with People. And the reason we do that is because, we like, if we're posting things on social media, we like to understand, we like to see views that our video received or how many likes we get on a post, other indicators like that, depending on the social media channel. And these may be good initial indications that we are connecting with people. But they don't usually represent our true goal, right? They're not really necessarily getting us where we want to be. They're just kind of a starting point. So in this lesson, we're going to explore ways that we can help people genuinely connect and to keep them moving forward in their journey toward discipleship. That's the real goal we have. So in this lesson, what we want to do is you're going to be learning the characteristics of true media engagement in a media outreach. You're going to be shown how to recognize and measure true engagement on different channels. You'll be thinking about that. You're going to learn how to recognize and match prompts that we give with respondents' motivation and abilities. And you're going to be introduced to techniques for filtering responses for increased ministry impact. That's where we're going. So to start off, I guess I would just ask, how many different posts of different kinds do you think you see every day? This could be even things like advertisements in the real world, like billboards and signs and things like that. It could be advertisements in a digital online world. It could be posts from friends, or there may be other things that you see. You see a lot of them every day if you're active on the internet in different social media channels. But how many of those posts that you see each day do you actually do something? Like click on them or like them or share them or things like that. Have you ever thought about how your own behavior works and how people try to influence you? It's interesting to think about this and observe ourselves for a second to say, why did I click on that? Or why would I share this and not share this? That's a really important thing to understand about ourselves and our audiences. And we use the term engagement. That's one of my favorite words because it's much more than just posting things. It's much more than just having a lot of views on something. It's deeper than that. So what is engagement actually when we're talking about it? And I guess I would say, starting out, what is it not? What is not engagement? So it's not about just the likes, views, or even follows, although each of those things can help us in some way. It's not just the reach, quote unquote. That's a term that social media channels use, that social sites want to sell you reach, right? We will guarantee this reach if you spend this amount of money, those kinds of things. And it's certainly not the potential audience who might see your media, like a footprint of a satellite broadcast or something like that. So of course, all of these things are good, but they are not the real goal that we have, right? So engagement is something much deeper. Engagement, I would say, is about developing a personal connection. Right? So we know that one of the characteristics of new media is that people have choices. The user choice and the personalization of content. They watch things and they choose things that are more meaningful to them rather than just watching everything or everything showing up on their feed, right? The algorithms, the social media channels feed things to us that are based on what they think we will like. Right? We know this. That's how these systems work. So we don't want to be content with just a vague idea that someone has seen our content. Maybe they've seen it, maybe they haven't. Maybe they like it, maybe they don't like it. Maybe they clicked something, but we really don't understand that. What we really want is to connect with them in a personal way. We want to go deeper. That's real engagement. So I want you to think of everything kind of as a story. The things that we're doing are really stories. And each of us lives in our own story, right? If we think about our own lives, we have a journey that we have been on, we're on at this moment, and that we hope to be on maybe. For instance, we are the main character of our own story. We're the person we pay attention to the most and we watch and observe and care about. We each have goals, we have desires, we have problems that need to be solved, questions that need to be answered, and we have a destination that we're sort of aiming for, maybe really specifically or sort of vaguely. We want to be in this sort of a place. And some of the stages of our life's journey can be mapped in some way, right? We can say, okay, this happened here, this is where I've come from, here's where I want to be going, this is an event that happened to me. So I want you to think about, and you could even pause the video here, take some time in the class to discuss, for instance, your own journey to faith. Where did your story begin? You don't have to necessarily go back to when you were born, but maybe your faith journey. Where did that really begin? What questions did you have? What challenges were you facing? What disruptions were you experiencing? We use that term a lot, a disruption or a dissatisfaction that causes us to be open to think about other things or actively seek other answers. What events can you identify that helped you come to faith in Christ? It might not have even been a Christian thing or a God thing, but an event that happened that drew you toward God. Or it might be something very specifically how God spoke to you in some very, very significant way. Think about those stages in the journeys, because what we're trying to do with our audience is join them in that journey, but we have to sort of figure out, where are they? And so we use these devices, these tools, these models that we call a funnel and a journey map. And in lesson number 5, when we talked about high-level conversion, we introduced this idea of a funnel. And if you want to review that, jump back to the lesson 5 lesson plan. You can kind of review some of the content there related to this funnel that we have. And this funnel diagram comes from Dr. Frank Preston. But it's based on experiences and sort of mapping out how people generally experience a high-level conversion. So, for instance, we talk about things like belief disruption, a cognitive opening to ideas, seeking, religious seeking stages, these different stages that people go through. So we'll use that sort of idea, and the funnel gives us sort of that sort of broad map. But the journey map that we're giving to you gets us much deeper in that. And it takes these stages that people might go through or tend to go through, and it gives us ways to fill in some things and envision how we might engage with them, connect with them. So we're going to talk about this in more depth. The building a journey map activity that you're going to do at the end is something that we encourage you to participate in, because it'll help you take specific audiences and think through, what would we do at this stage if a person is asking these. And so, as an example, I'll show you this. This is an example journey map that I created just as a sample document, and you can look over this. There's a link to this as a PDF file in the lesson plan, and it's good to sort of walk through this and sort of look through, beginning with using persona sheets and things like that to kind of build out one of these. So I've provided a sample that I created that kind of throws out some ideas in filling in all these little boxes, okay? But what we do is we start with persona sheets that we've created. And so the persona sheets are something that we talk about in a couple of our foundations lessons. And a persona, of course, is a description of the kind of person who we think is going to be responsive. It's a kind of person, it's the questions they're asking, it's the channels they're on, it's the 3 W's that we've discussed in some other lessons. And we begin with that, And across the map are basic steps that they might be in, okay? They could be beginning with what we call the belief disruption stage. They could be actively religious seeking when we're saying, okay, we're going to do some media for people who are actively seeking answers about Jesus. Let's start there. So down the map are boxes that we can fill in. And all of those things are really planning our engagement. It's mapping out what might their story be. So it's their story, which includes the ways they might describe themselves. It might be what's going on with them, what disruptions are they experiencing, what are their pain points, what are the questions that they have, what are their needs. The next level down is where we connect with them. This is that where stage. Is it traditional media? Is it social media? Is it real life channels? Are there ways we can do those combinations of places to connect with them? It's also where do they look for answers normally? So if it's a highly risky place, where are people searching for answers? Is it the internet? Is it some other place? What sites might they use on the internet to look for answers, especially answers about needs, about spiritual questions? Where do they look for those? The next step down is our story for them. So we could call this the agenda setting, which really is what we want to talk with them about, right? We're inviting them into a conversation, and we have a specific thing we want to talk with them about, depending on where they are. If they're actively seeking answers about Jesus, we're going to say, well, let's talk about Jesus. Here are some words that he said. Let's talk about these words of Jesus together. And each of these stages, of course, is going to have a very specific objective. There's an agenda at one stage that's different than another stage, right? And that involves this idea of a call to action for them. So, for instance, what is the next thing we might ask them to do? And at different stages, it will be different. Is it just respond to a message? Let's engage in a messaging sort of conversation. Or is it, would you like to download this thing? Or would you like to meet face to face with someone? So our responses then can vary. What might we do when they do respond to us at a very early stage? We don't understand them. And then what is our response to them at later stages? So it's important to match all of these things together. That's why we create this sort of a grid in a journey map, because our channels and our content and our responses and our calls to action have to match where they are, right? What are they, what's their level of motivation? What's their intention? And so this is a really important thing for us to balance out. We have to balance out their motivation. How motivated, how desperate are they? How intent are they with their ability and the prompts we are matching with them? Okay, so for instance, what we don't want to do is if a person's in a very restricted environment, for instance, imagine that as being our audience person. What if the only call to action we ever offer to them is come to a group meeting in public, right? Or come pick up a Bible at this place, or even mailing them a Bible, for instance. If they're highly motivated, they have the ability to do that. That prompt, that thing we are asking them to do, might be a good thing, right? It might be the exact right thing to do. However, what we have to know where they are and their motivation and things. If we ask them something that's very, very difficult to do and very risky to do, and their motivation is low, they aren't going to do it. They're going to say, "Oh, I'm not that interested to do that, right? I'm not going to take that step." But could we think of a more simple step for them? For instance, if they're interested but still checking out Jesus, and it's a very risky place, what could we do that's a simple step, that's lower risk, that's simpler for them, that's just one more step for them? It's not the big step, but it matches their level of motivation. I'm this interested, but not that interested. And this is something I could do easily, I could do with less risk, those kinds of things. Could we just private message someone with some scripture links or some phrases of scripture or something like that, as opposed to asking them to, go buy a Bible, right? Simple steps that are not bad steps. They're just matching the level that they're at with the ability they have, all those kinds of things. So we want to match those things together. That makes sense? As we look at our journey map, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be evaluating whether we're providing the right kind of content that matches the questions they're asking, the motivation they have, how difficult it is that we're asking them to do, the what we want them to do should match all those things. So that's just a simple way to think about it. Let's think of a lot of little steps that we can give to people, unless they ask for the big steps. If they say, I want to meet with someone right off in our first engagement with them, well, by all means, have that available. But if they aren't, have something else available for them. That's the principle. So one of the questions that we have to ask, a key question, is what is true engagement on different social media channels? Each channel is a little bit different, right? We use different social media in different ways. For instance, Google and YouTube tend to be places where people search for things, or entertainment, right? They're just killing time or watching music videos or something like that. But people may not really have significant conversations on YouTube. They might use it to learn something but not connect with people really in YouTube. So think about that in your context. And so you can discuss this in your people group, or discuss this among your team, thinking about the people you're trying to engage with. How much do you know about this? How do people use the most popular media channels? What do they use them for? And how does your audience share and converse about sensitive or personal subjects? So they may use one kind of media channel all the time for something, right? It's the most popular thing, but it may not be the channel that's used for serious questions, right? It might not be the place that they reveal that they're asking serious questions about personal subjects. That might be a different channel. Okay, so discuss that amongst yourselves and see if you understand how people are using media. How do you use media? How do your friends out in the community use media? So take some time to discuss that also. Our key question number 2 is, what is our engagement strategy to move them off of our online system and into what we call offline real-world follow-up systems? This is going to be face-to-face meetings, things like that. In the Foundations lesson number 6, we talk about this idea of moving people from online to offline and into real-world relationships. So you can review lesson number 6 for more information about that. And we can think of engagement at many of these stages as a kind of filtering. So you may get a lot of different kinds of responses. It could be just views, likes, things like that you can't really understand. But when people begin to respond, like comment, reply to a question, something like that, come to your website, your web page, and fill out a form, for instance, engagement then serves the purpose of filtering them. Can you find people who are truly seeking, or are these people trolls who are opposing what you're doing and they're angry with you and they're posting those kinds of things? So you have to decide how you can tell a person's motivation and intention. Your team can develop and plan some good questions to ask that are effective at doing this. And experience is a really good guide for this. So what criteria could you use to determine, for instance, whether a person is receptive to an offline or a face-to-face meeting with someone, or whether or not they're not ready for that? An example, a simple example is, are they willing to provide personal contact information, a phone number, email address, things like that? That's a personal identifier. If they're willing to do that, that's a good indication. We might also say, for instance, if it's a very risky place and you don't know whether this is maybe a person who is, putting on an act to trap you, that kind of thing happens, right? If they're willing to bring a friend, are they willing to share this with other people? If a person is willing to share this with other people, we find that usually is a pretty good indication that they're a safe person, they're motivated, they're sincere about their questions. Not always, but you have to think about this in your own local context. How could we measure this? And this is another thing that you could use as a discussion question for your team. You could pause the video now and take some time to talk about what kind of questions could we ask to filter someone to determine how motivated they are, how safe they are to meet with, those kinds of questions that might apply in your context. For learning activities now, we want to send you off just to work on this. And the first thing is to use a disciple-making journey map. So in the lesson plan, you can download samples, blank journey maps, and they're in the form of a spreadsheet like Microsoft Excel or some other spreadsheet program. You can open them and review the sample document, work with a persona that you have developed by now, and then imagine and brainstorm some sections of the map. Don't fill out the entire journey map in this, but say, where would a person start? If a person is going to start, for instance, maybe pick a persona who's actively seeking religious answers, so maybe kind of the middle of the funnel. Fill out some things. Think about the place a person might first contact your media. So I have some samples in there, but you're going to be thinking about things like their story, the questions they're asking, where we connect with them, what our objective might be, what's our call to action, what do we want them to do right there? We want them to download a Bible portion, we want to engage in an online Bible study, or they're way down their journey and we want to meet with them face to face. What kinds of content can we give them? What kinds of invitations can we give them? So take some time now, grab those sample documents, and there are also some videos that explain how to figure them out, how to walk through them that are more in detail. And do that as a team or as multiple teams if you're doing this as a group class. Take some time to do that. And then after that, get together and share some of it. So using the ideas that you've worked on in your journey map, come together as a group or as your team and discuss it. Discuss questions that came up. And if there are some helpful comments that someone made or that you saw that another group did, if you're working with multiple teams in an activity, you might learn something from another team. That's always something that happens. That's it for Foundations lesson number 8, walking with people or engagement. I hope this was helpful to you. You can find the lesson plans for this and other lessons, of course, on the Mobile Ministry Forum site. And if you have questions or comments, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can comment and subscribe to this channel or contact us through some of the other resources on the Mobile Ministry Forum site. This curriculum is part of a larger set, and we hope it's a blessing and encouragement to you as you pursue your media ministries. Thanks.